Hey there everybody, Coach Brandon here again, and today we're looking into our last topic of our closed guard chapter. Today we're going to look at what to do as somebody tries to stand up inside of our closed guard. Now in the closed guard, when our opponent is on their knees, they're susceptible to all of our attacks. That's when I can break my opponent down, bring the arm across the center line going into the side scissor. I can go to the top block with the arm to the center line. Or I can take the arm out and away from the center line for the clamp and the inside rest. And my opponent knows these things. It's also very hard for my opponent to break open my closed guard when they're down on their two knees. And if they can't break open my closed guard, then they can't pass my guard. They have to be able to break it open first. So what a lot of your more skilled, more knowledgeable opponents are going to do is they're going to stand up in an attempt to break open your closed guard. We need to be prepared for when that happens. First thing we're going to touch on is I want to keep my opponent's knees down on the floor as much as possible. As he goes to stand up, he's going to have to make one step and a second step. It's in the middle of these steps, when his weight is shifting and when his knee and leg come off the floor, that he's most susceptible to off balancing. So as I see my opponent's head moving and that leg rising, we're going to pull our knees into our chest, and we're going to break them back down to the floor. We can do this during the first step or the second step. Once they get up to the vertical posture, we can also block the ankles and knee pull to break them back down. So let's take a look at those, and then we'll continue on. So as I'm here, Ant's hands here, he typically wants his hands on my body as a base of support, so when I go to knee pull, I can't break his posture. Inside bicep ties also works very well. So as I see Ant go to stand up, I can't just knee pull right away. Like he has a good solid base, he makes strong arms, and he goes to stand. I'm not going to be able to break him down. So what I want to do is I want to time my attack. I want to take out his base of support. I can swim my hands to the inside, and then I want to knee pull at the same time. So as Ant goes to stand up, I can break him back down to his knees. I can do that during the first step. I can also do it during the second step. He goes to stand, he goes 1, 2, and we break him back down. Now, knee pulling during the steps is one great way to break him down. I'd say it's probably the strongest way. There is another option. If he gets to the vertical posture, stand up. I can also take my two hands, thumb post, right on the ankles. I'm going to push my head and my shoulders away by extending my arms, and at the same time, I'm going to pull my knees to my chest to break him back down to his knees. Now that he's back down on his knees, I can go through and use all my attacks we've been looking at. Now, another option. Once my opponent starts to stand up, if I can't break him down right away, the next goal, the next priority for you to focus on is going to be keeping control of your opponent's head. Primarily keeping their head below their hips. That's going to leave him susceptible to a lot of great upper body submissions, primarily the arm bar, okay? So from the closed guard, as I see Ant go to stand up and I can't break him down, as he stands, go ahead, before he's able to get away with the head, I'm going to control the head. I like to do this, if he has a gi on, I like to do this with a cross collar grip. In no gi scenarios, you're going to have to use a collar tie. You can use a collar tie in the gi as well, but for gi I do prefer a cross collar grip. Now when Ant goes to get vertical posture, I give a pull and he can't get his head up. My goal from here is to keep his head lower than his hips. With the head lower than the hips, I can begin to walk my legs on a downward slope because his back becomes a downward slope, and I lock my legs high on his body here, high over the head. Now I don't need the cross collar grip. Now when Ant goes to posture up, I just pull in with my knees and I'm hanging off the end of the lever. It's so hard for him to get to posture. So what I do here, I release the cross cuff grip and I collect his arm wrist to wrist so he can't figure four. Remember from our top block lesson, when he figure fours, he needs to get his wrist over his elbow. He needs to get his elbow underneath his wrist. If I keep his wrist glued to my chest and he goes to figure four, it's not there for him. Even if he starts going here, he can't actually get his wrist into his elbow. Now from here, I'm going to take a scoop grip on the ankle. That's going to help me get an angle. This scoop grip pulls me to an angle, and my left leg comes around the corner, and I lock a top lock. Now from here, I want to pass my leg over, but before I do so, If I'm not careful, Ant's going to posture up and away. So you've got to make sure that my right leg here curls down over the head. So I go from here to here. Now Ant goes to posture up, and my right leg holds him down long enough to bring my cross-faced leg over, and now we just hip in and break the arm. If I get to this position and I go to trap Ant's arm and he successfully gets to a figure 4, now I'm going to focus more on sweeping. This is not going to be the time to break from here. Now I want to put him on his back into a weak position. So I'm going to take my left arm, I'm going to thread through, going elbow to elbow. The crook of my elbow to the crook of his elbow. My right hand posts behind the ankle or the calf muscle, and I begin to push my head inside of his ankles. Now from here, I'm going to point my feet over his head. I'm going to try to get heavy over his head, and I'm going to continue to push with this hand, with the goal of trying to drop Ant on the top of his head. I want this part of his head to try to land on the mat over here. So as he's defending the arm bar, I go underneath, and we put him down. Now from here, I just pass the cross-faced leg over. Now it's a matter of looking at how the arms are entangled and figuring out the best solution for untangling the arms and getting through to the victory. So that's another great option. So first, if my opponent goes to stand up, I want to keep them on their 2 knees by pulling with my knees and breaking him down. If he does get to his 2 feet, the next priority, keep that head lower than his hips. If I keep the head lower than the hips, I can go into some great attacks, like the arm bar and the sweep. Now, my opponent stands up and he breaks the cross collar grip, or maybe I miss the cross collar grip. Now, once he gets to vertical posture, I'm primarily going to be interested in sweeping him backwards. So far, everything we've been doing from the closed guard for the last 7-8 weeks has been pulling him down forward, because generally the shoulders come in front of his hips. When the shoulders come in front of the hips like so, it's very easy for me to break my opponent's posture in that direction. When my opponent stands up, and the shoulders are directly over the hips, now you're going to be better off looking to take your opponent and getting him to stumble backwards with things like double ankle sweeps and ankle scoop sweeps. So let's get into some of these options. With the ankle scoop sweep we're going to look at, there's 3 good variations. We're going to look at a variation with a cross cuff grip so they can't post. We're going to look at a variation where he strips my cross cuff grip and forces me into a handstand variation. And then we're going to look at a situation where he turns his knee in to defend the ankle scoop sweep, and that leads me into an omoplata for sweeping. Okay, so let's look at this mini series. The closed guard. Ant goes to stand up. I'm trying to break him down, it's not working. I go to control the head, but he's going to pop my grip off. He goes 2-on-1, he breaks. And as he breaks, back down. As he breaks, right here, I know where his hand's going to be. It's going to be on my wrist. That's the only way he can break my grip. So I know the hand is, I'm just going to grab it. I'm going to grab the cuff, not the hand, the cuff. He breaks, and now I'm going to pass the cuff to a cross cuff grip. I go from a straight cuff to a cross cuff, and I lock my elbow into my hip so he can't post. Now, if he stays down like this, I'm going to go back in my arm bar. Okay, I'm going to start climbing down, going into my arm bar. So he's going to go up to vertical posture. Now I can't go to my arm bars, I'm going to have to sweep. So from here, scoop in with my ankle, or elbow deep on his ankle, and I'm going to use my hips to drive Ant's knee out. As when we come up, since I have this cross cuff grip, he can't post, so he goes all the way down to the shoulder, and it becomes ridiculously easy for me to climb up and take the top position. Okay, so that cross cuff grip is a great asset for this ankle scoop sweep. As long as we're on the notion of the ankle scoop sweep, and we stand square facing the camera. Our goal with the ankle scoop sweep is to take his knee and get it to bow outward. So my ankle scoop, my elbow deep scoop on the ankle, holds his foot in place, and then I'm going to use my hips to drive his knee outward. You'll see, try to make your pants tight here so you can see, I'm trying to get that knee to bow out like so, almost like almost like a butterfly stretch, okay? Like a groin stretch. So I get that knee to drive out, and that's gonna force him down to the floor. So that's how this ankle scoop sweep works. We're using our hips to drive into their knee to force their knee to bow outward, and that breaks their balance. Now, we just looked at this with a cross cuff grip. That cross cuff grip gave us the benefit that he couldn't post and he couldn't defend the sweep. Some of your more intelligent opponents know this, and they're going to try to break that cross cuff grip so that they have a chance to recover top position. But that just gives us another opportunity. We can ankle scoop right to a triangle. So, the closed guard, Ant stands up. He breaks my grip. I steal a cuff grip, he's going to break my cuff grip, and now I'm left with nothing. So from here I can go into my ankle scoop sweep, but without the cuff grip, this hand is useless. So I'm going to assign another task to this hand. I'm going to take this hand that's not doing anything, and I'm going to gain extra power by driving my hand into the floor next to my head. My fingers go to the floor, my heel, my palm, the heel of my palm, the heel of my hand goes to the floor. And now as I drive my hips into the knee, I get extra power by pushing off my left arm. Now we start to climb up. Now because he can base, he'll often base on the elbow and then eventually climb up to the hand, and now he's going to try to fight to get back to top position. All I need to do from here, since he's basing, he can't defend the triangle. I'm going to control the head. I'm now posting on my left foot and my right hand. My right leg becomes weightless and I can easily pass it up and over. So I pass my leg up and over. I allow Ant to recover top position, and he comes right up into a triangle. From here, you guys know what to do. We control the head with a collar tie. We take a scoop grip and use that to get out to an angle, and then we finish from here. And obviously, we saw last week, we can do that same handstand ankle scoop sweep and take that into a hip sweep. We saw that last week, so I'm not going to show that again. But understand that you guys can start connecting those techniques together. Now, we're going to look at another variation where maybe Ant knows that my whole goal is to take that knee and bow it outward. So Ant is going to intelligently turn his knee inward to defend the sweep. When I see this kind of thing happening, when he turns the knee inward, it tends to turn the hips a little bit and turn side on to me. When I get that angle, it tends to be pretty easy to take him over with an omoplata sweep, okay? Now this omoplata is going to be strengthened because I have an ankle scoop. I can use my ankle scoop to grab the cuff, and I can control both Ant's arm and his leg with just one of my arms. Okay, makes for a great sweep. Let's take a look. From the closed guard, Ant stands up. He breaks my cross collar grip. I try to steal a cuff grip, and from here, I'm going to go to my ankle scoop. Now from here, he's going to turn his knee in. Yes, so now I'm going to try to hit the ankle scoop, and I can't go anywhere. So what I'm going to do from here is I'm going to pass his cuff from my left hand to my right hand. And you guys see what's happening. I'm effectively connecting his left arm to his left leg. When Ant tries to free his arm now, it's anchored to his leg because my arm is scooped underneath. So now I'm going to take a cross collar grip. My left foot is going to push off either his hip or his shoulder to help me get an angle. And I'm going to chop down with my leg in his armpit. I chop down, I come up to a prop, and I come up and I take the top position. Okay? Since we didn't show that one in class this week, I will show that a second time. That's a technique we didn't have time to get to in our classes. And Saturday's a review, so we won't have a chance to get to a Saturday either. So he stands up. I want to control the head so I get to my top lock and arm bar. He challenges that. I want to control this. I'm going to go through my ankle scoop. He turns the knee in. So now the ankle scoop becomes almost impossible. So from here, I'm going to pass the cuff off. I'm going to take a grip on the collar to try to control the head. And now I use my left foot to kick off, and I come to this angle. From here, my right leg chops down in his shoulder, and I come up to my elbow and my hand. And we come up and we take the top position. Now it's just going to be a matter of trying to get inside his knee. He wants to keep his knee tight to his chest and re-guard. And I want to come underneath the knee, and I want to get that space. I want to get his knees away from the chest and control the space. I want to get in tight to the pocket of the hip. We're going to see this again when we go into passing the guard. In order to block his knees out, right now his knees are in my way. In order for me to get the knees out of the way, I tend to like to control the pocket of the hip. So I'm going to take my left hand, thread it into the pocket of the hip, take the knees out of the way, and I can come up into a dominant position. Okay, so we've looked at a lot of good things so far. We've broken our opponent down to their two knees. As they stand up, we time our knee pulls to break them down and keep them on their knees where they're vulnerable. If he does stand up, our next goal is control the head. Don't let the head higher than the hips. With the head lower than the hips, we can climb up to a top lock and start to attack arm bars and sweeps from there. If he does get up to vertical posture, we control that cross cuff grip, and we go to an ankle scoop. If he frees the cross cuff grip, we use a handstand variation. We've seen that if the ankle scoop fails because he turns the knee in, we go to an omoplata. Okay, so we've got a lot of good sequential attacks here. Now we're going to start to branch off into other techniques that are similar, some similar, some different, that are just other options for you. Okay, so this doesn't represent everything you can do. Everything I've showed so far is some of my favorite stuff, but now let me show you some others as well. Okay. Another one of my favorites, the double ankle sweep. So super simple, so simple. The simple notion is, anytime you control both of your opponent's legs, both of their feet, and you apply a pushing force, he has to fall. If I control both ankles and I push in a direction, he cannot take any sort of steps to correct the balance, and his butt's going to hit the mat every time, and that's going to be a fight for top position. So Ant stands up, I'm trying to control the head, he breaks, and I'm left with nothing here. I'm going to control the ankles from the outside position. We don't go inside on this one. We can go inside on one side with the ankle scoop, but I don't want to go inside on both sides simultaneously. This can lead to injuries. If Ant were to fall forward and break his balance here, hands on here, my arms stuck underneath me, my shoulders are stuck, I can't move. And if he were to fall or slip and collapse all his weight, everything's going to go crashing down on my neck. So let's not go in with two hands, that's a safety hazard. We are either inside with one, or if we want to use both hands on the ankles, we go outside. Now with my two outside grips, I'm going to open my guard. I'm going to pinch my knees in front of Ant's body, and I take my feet and I contour them to Ant's ribs, okay, the lower hips there. If my feet are dangling, Ant can now pummel underneath my ankles, and he can start to stack and pass me from here. This is not good. But when I take my feet and I contour, now Ant goes to pummel underneath the ankles, it's not easy. And it's very hard for me to get that in the time available. Okay, it's going to be a very short bit. As he's trying to pummel in, I'm just going to drive my knees up and back, and I sit him down to his butt. Now he's probably going to prop up, and there's going to be a fight for top position. From here, to win the fight for top position, I'm going to turn my body side on and close behind me, just like we did for the hip sweep. I'm going to take a grip on the head, and I start to lift my hips up. Now, if you'll notice, there is a triangle here. The same triangle we saw in the ankle scoop sweep. I could throw my leg right over, and I could let him come up on top and complete a triangle. Otherwise, once we're in this dominant position, I can just take my hips up and over Ant's knee. So you see Ant's knee is behind me here. I want to pick my hips up and over that knee and sit right on his lap. So I'm here, I turn side on, I come up and over, and I sit on the lap. Now from here, I can just drive my knees to the floor, tackle down, and take top position. But of course, that triangle is there waiting for you as well if you want to play with that. Another one of our techniques of opportunity is going to be the mermaid sweep, or that's what I learned that it's called. This is a technique where my opponent makes the mistake of standing with his legs a little too close together, and I can take my closed guard from his hips to his knees. I can pinch his two knees together using my legs. From there, he has very little base of support. Once again, we have the same principle that we just looked at. control both of your opponent's legs. And if you can control both of their legs and apply a force in any direction, you can take them down. It's the same concept, just manifested a little differently. Let's take a look. Ant goes to stand up, but this time he makes the mistake of standing a little too close. Or maybe he does this thing that some people will do, where they take the knees, and they try to take the knees into the butt, just like so. So when I feel this kind of thing happening, I like to take double straight cuff grips, and I drop my closed guard. I'm going to open my closed guard, drop my hips, and I relock my closed guard around his knees. Now from here, I'm going to pinch my knees together. Now from here, I just take his hands one way, I pull my knees to my chest, and I point my knees in the other direction. So if I take his hands over here, I'm going to pull my knees and point my knees over toward the camera. Vice versa, I could bring the hands this way and point my knees that way. It doesn't really matter, it's symmetrical. So from here, I start to pull my knees in, we take him down, and he falls to his butt. Now I just come up to my elbow, and we're up in the top position, ready to start working to pass his guard. So the mermaid sweep is again a good option anytime your opponent makes, I don't know if you call it a mistake, but makes the decision to keep his knees a little close and maybe drive those knees behind your butt, okay, or in tight to the hips. Okay, so that's most of your basic options, most of the fundamental options. Let's now take one last look, a bonus section, if you will, where my opponent stands up, and anytime I feel like the upper body is going up and away from me, your opponent will almost always leave behind the lower body. Understand that if my opponent is going to stand and pull away, they can only do so by leaving their legs. Conversely, if, just so you guys know this works in both directions, if I'm trying to attack the leg and my opponent starts to pull the legs away, they typically leave their head and their upper body a little vulnerable. So you're going to want to learn to play the upper body and the lower body against each other. Now, I'm not going to go into all the fine, small details of this. I just want to, because we could literally go into a whole new video of all the intricacies of how to invert on the legs and get into leg locks. But I'm just going to give you the basic introduction now, and you guys can play with it on your own. From the closed guard, Ant stands up, and I lose the upper body, he goes to vertical posture. Now I could go double ankle, that's a good option. I could try to go ankle scoop, that's another great option. But if you're a leg locker, if you like leg entanglements, another awesome option is to open my guard. I'm going to take a scoop grip, open my guard, and now my right knee is going to get inside of Ant's knee. That's the goal. So as I'm here, I pull myself to an angle, I scoop grip, angle, knee goes inside his knee. Now from here I can roll up, and I can start to come into the legs. I can try to knock him down and V-bar him from here. I can thread my legs through to 50-50 and knock him down from here. I can thread both my feet to the inside to go with a cross option and knock them down from here. Okay? There's a lot of different variations, a lot of different ways things can go once you start inverting and going into the legs. And a lot of the way it plays out is going to also be up to how your opponent decides to react. The ways he tries to turn, if he turns right or turns left, or what he does. And we're not going to get into all those, but just understand that as the upper body pulls up and away, and my opponent leaves a leg extended for me, you can always go from the upper body to the lower body. And if they start to pull the lower body away, you can always go back to the upper body. So learning to play the upper body and the lower body against each other is an incredibly important skill for your development. So as a quick recap, we're wrapping up the video now. When somebody tries to stand up inside my closed guard, time your knee pulls and keep them down on their two knees where they're vulnerable and when they can't open up your closed guard. If they do stand up, control the head and keep that head lower than the hips so you can climb up to a nice high guard, high on your opponent's spine, and go into attacks in the arms and the upper body. If your opponent gets up to vertical posture, now we're going to look at the ankle scoop sweep. There's several variations of this, like an ankle scoop and then knock them down with a cross cuff grip. If I lose the cross cuff grip, I can use a handstand. Or if I keep the cross cuff grip but my opponent defends by turning the knee in, now I can spin on that home and pull out. guys. If my opponent stands up and they make the decision to keep the knees tight together, you can drop into a mermaid sweep is a great option. And if all else fails, or if you're just an Ashigarami specialist, you can almost always invert, get your knee inside their knee, and start going into different leg entanglements and trying to break the legs. Or you can just use the Ashigarami to sweep. Entangle their legs, trip them up, get their hips to the mat, then get on top. Take your sweep, and then start working your pass. Alright, guys, that's a lot of great options for you. A lot of good things that guys can think about as your opponent stands up inside your close guard. So now, we've gone through the entire close guard fundamentals. You guys have all the tools you need to have a highly effective, highly dangerous close guard. If your opponent's gotten into two knees, you have side scissor and top lock and clamp and inside wrist. If it's hard to break them down to these, we have flower sweeps and pendulum sweeps and hip sweeps and scissor sweeps. And now we know what to do as they stand up. We know what to do every step of the way. Middle of the step. During the second step with the head low. When they step up and the head's high. Guys, you have all the possibilities you need to go out there and submit, almost anybody you'll come up against. Alright? So work on these new skills and develop a highly dangerous close guard. Thanks for studying, guys.